world's lowest birth rate in 2018, which is 0.98 per woman. So not even one child per woman. So a lot of people now are not getting married because of their own personal reasons, but even economic reasons. So by 2067, 46.5% of Korea's population will be 65 years old. So it means that really, like your generation, like the younger Koreans now, will be taking the lead and will be driving the direction of the country, because most likely your population will be very aged, and it will be very difficult for the economy to sustain itself. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the age dependency ratio. Like for example, government should support the older people because they don't have jobs and they have a pension system, and the people who pay for that are the younger people, the working population. So that's why I think, especially in Korea, the youth is really important in setting the direction of the country. And I feel that now is the best time for the youth to be more engaged, more aware of what the country needs to change. I know it's very difficult, especially with the Confucian way of thinking, where there's a hierarchy that the older people usually know better than the younger ones. But again, since the time is changing, then I do believe that the youth now can eventually change this systemic problem, and they can empower the next generation. And with that, we can ensure more equality and probably achieve peace as well with that. And I totally agree with what you said, like the importance of education. Nowadays, education is not just in school. You can do it by yourself. You can do it at home through your mobile phone. So I think as youth, we should be more hungry for information. Feed yourself with knowledge. Don't just use your phone for social media. I mean, it's fun, of course, right? To waste your time scrolling to the news feed. When you reach the bottom, you scroll up again and read the new ones. But from time to time, you need to be this person who wants to really achieve knowledge, so that you can make wiser decisions in your life that will eventually affect not just your family, your community, and at the end, your country.
Okay, another excellent point, bringing up awareness of the youth, and I think it would be very important to talk about how we can bring out the awareness. How can we bring awareness to the youth? Because a lot of youth, I can't speak for youth, some of them may not ever think about this topic or never think about peace in general. So thinking about how we can bring the awareness to our generation, to our youth, could be another crucial topic that we can add on. Yes.
I want to add something while I was listening to your from the US and Philippines. I was thinking, if in Korea we don't get education or reunion with North Korea, we don't get a proper education of Korea. So that's why I think the youth are not interested. They know, but they just ignore it. Because it's not our problem. So because of too much competition, they don't have time to think about something else, because it's not something in front of us. So I think while we are in high school, we should have special subject to learn about like what's happening in North Korea. And if we want to have like peace, I think we should understand North Korea too. We should understand about their culture, their people. When we become like one country, I think it's gonna become a one country Portugal anytime in the future. But to do that, we need to do in peaceful way. The only thing is to understand them. We cannot just become one, and there will be so much problems. Like there are like. Yeah, I don't know what I want to say, but yeah. So I think there should be like talking to youth in high school. So that's how we can make some motivation for our youth. Peace.
Yes, I just wanted to say that like the delegates have made really excellent points, and I just wanted to add that besides education, which I think is something fundamental, I also think that enabling critical thinking is just as important, because many times we look at the news or newspapers to get our information, which is completely valid and important. But sometimes we take that as the blind truth. We just listen to one source or two sources and we're like, okay, so this is what's happening. And I feel like many young people, myself included, especially when I was in high school, I lacked critical thinking. Whatever I was told, whatever the media fed me, I believed. And then I realized as I got older and as I went to other countries and I saw different perspectives, that there are different realities. And it doesn't mean that they're false. They can all be true, but it's just like a different thing that we have to keep in mind. So I believe that when we are focusing on education, we should also make sure to maybe allow people not to think, not how to think, but how, for example, in many countries, when you do a test, usually it's A, B, C, D, right? But in other countries and other education systems, it's a sentence, and from there, you expose what you think, and you say, I agree and I disagree, and give your arguments. I feel like that's a great tool to enable critical thinking, because that allows you to put different things into perspective, and to some point, it allows you to distance yourself from being biased, which I think is very, very important. And another thing that I wanted to talk about is when the delegate from Kazakhstan said, I also agree with her, I feel like owning up to what you did or what your country did is also very important. And there's also a quote that reminded me of what she said, and it's, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. And I think that's also very important, because if we just focus on the future, that's pretty good, but we also have to own up and learn from our mistakes in the past and make sure that that doesn't happen again. I feel like that's one of the best tools that we have as a youth to make sure that our world is peaceful from now on.
Thank you. We are having very critical opinions about education, especially thinking critically, owning up to what you did, and having an education course or topic about you uniting. Yes, I think that was very good critical opinions and statements, and lifeless, yes. Good battle.
This is a very beautiful question. What can we do as a youth generation for a better future and change the future? 정말 중요한 포인트인데요. 저는 이렇게 생각합니다. 일단은 우리가 교육 얘기를 많이 하고 있지만 어떤 교육을 할 것이니까 지금 중요합니다. 지금 우리 대한민국에 거의 한 300만 명 정도 외국인이 우리 같은 사람이 살고 있고 250만 명은 국적이 한국이고 우리 같은 귀화한 사람 포함하면 300만 명인데 이 국제 결혼도 지금 많아지고 있습니다. 아까 필리핀 분이 말씀하신 것처럼 국제 결혼해가지고 지금 아이들이 많이 지금 태어나고 있는데 아직까지도 이 아이들이 한국에서는 외국인이라고 얘기하고 있고요. 자기 나라에 갔을 때는 한국인이라고 얘기합니다. 그래서 애들이 중간에서는 엄마 아빠한테 과연 나는 어느 나라 사람이냐에 정말 큰 문제가 있어요. 아직까지 우리 한국 학교에도 선생님들은 계속 교육을 받고 있지만 이 외국 아이들, 국제 결혼에서 태어난 믹스 아이들을 봤을 때는 정말 이 친구들은 자리가 없는 거예요. 어느 부분에 섞여 있는지 잘 모르고 있기 때문에 이 교육이라는 것은 일단 우리 대한민국에서 시작을 해야 되거든요. 아이들한테는 일단은 다양성에 대한 얘기를 많이 해야 됩니다. colorful, diversity, 그 다음에 tolerance. 우리 지금 한국에 살고 있지만 300만 명 외국인이 있을 수 있잖아요. 어차피 서로 이해를 해야 되거든요. 근데 물론 제가 24년 됐기 때문에 처음 왔을 때하고 지금은 큰 차이가 있어요. 근데 앞으로도 우리가 한반도의 평화를 위해서는 일단 우리 한국에서는 외국인이랑 같이 사는 방법을 알아야 됩니다. 같이 살아야 되고 같이 아름다운 세상을 만들어야 되는데 아직까지도 나이가 7, 80 정도 되신 분들은 그런 부분은 잘 이해를 못 하시거든요. 그래서 우리가 이 교육이라는 부분도 학교에서는 초, 중, 유치원부터 해가지고 다른 나라 사람이랑 같이 행복하게 살 수 있는 방법을 가르쳐야 돼요. 그러니까 교육이 아무리 수준 높은 나라라도 같이 사는 방법을 지금 모르고 있기 때문에 조금 이제 문제들이 많이 생긴다고 생각합니다. 마무리하자면 이게 청소년 중요합니다. Youth very important. 근데 지금 전 세계적으로 전쟁을 하려고 하는 지금 나이가 60, 70대 리더들은 40년 전에 이 사람들이 정소년이었어요. 우리 같은 사람이 여기 지금 이 자리에 계시는 분들도 앞으로 30년 뒤에 자기 나라에서 국회의원 될 수 있고 총리가 될 수 있는데 그게 중요한 거 아니고요. 정말 같이 살 수 있는 방법을 항상 키워야 되고 욕심을 없애고 버리고 그래서 저는 그거를 첫 번째, 두 번째 그렇게 앞에 세우지 말고요. 우리가 인간입니다. 휴머니티. 이게 항상 학교에서는 어느 종교를 믿어도 우리는 다 인간이기 때문에 같이 사랑해야 되고 같이 살아야 되는 것을 잘 가르쳐야 되거든요. 근데 나라마다 뭐 국적주의, 내셔널리즘, 우리는 완벽하다, 우리는 뭐 위대하다, 제일 크다 그렇게 하게 되면은 그러면은 싸울 수밖에 없는 거죠. 그래서 가능하면은 이제 전 세계적으로 이런 이제 같이 살 수 있는 방법, 관용, tolerance, diversity, 그 다음에 dialogue 이게 정말 중요한 일인데 저는 여기서 하나 제안 드리고 싶은 거는 일단 우리 대한민국에서는 정말 다양성에 대해서는 그 세계화, 글로벌리제이션에 대해서는 우리 같은 이분들은 많이 자주 만나야 되고 한국에서는 어떻게 하면 더 잘 될 수 있는지에 대한 고민을 많이 해야 되고요. 마지막으로는 United Nations가 있습니다. 미국의 그 본사가 있는데 사실은 그 나라마다 그 리더들이 바뀔 수 있고 마인드가 바뀔 수 있지만 유엔이라는 그 자체가 정말 중요하고 튼튼하게 만들게 되면 나중에 심판 역할을 볼 수도 있고 중간에 브릿지 롤 할 수 있는 것이 United Nations인데 제가 보기에는 유엔이 아마 재선을 다 안 하는 걸로 생각합니다. 아까 정말 너무 좋은 얘기 하셨는데 캐시밀 문제든지 팔레스타인이든지 전 세계적으로 많은 문제가 있는데 이런 것들은 이제 나라들끼리 해결이 안 됩니다. 거기다가 미국이 들어가도 해결 안 되는 부분들이 많기 때문에 유나이티드 네이션스가 정말 튼튼해야 강해야 정말 제가 보기에는 많은 것을 해결할 수 있는데 지금 하고 있는 유엔은 어떻게 하는지는 잘 모르겠지만 아마 우리 한국이 이미지가 너무 좋으니까 이 한국에서도 작은 유엔처럼 지금 여기 모여 있는 분들이 아주 중요한 분들이신데 좀 자주 만나서 한국에 대한 문제 부분도 그 다음에 한반도 이쪽 그 페니슐라 그 다음에 전 세계적으로 어떤 평화에 대한 뭐가 할 수 있는지에 대한 좀 아이디어를 많이 나눴으면 좋겠습니다.
Thank you for your ideas. You talked about coexistence with other countries. It's not about just living by yourself, but you have to learn how to coexist with other countries, and you mentioned that, and that was very critical as well. Could we continue going around the table, and like this, you can add on whenever you have other different ideas. Yes, can we start back with you? That would be from this.
So I think one major topic that's been kind of circulating around in everyone's opinion is reconciliation, and that comes across in education, decolonization, even the way we frame the questions we ask. We have to understand where are we asking from. You know, what is our perspective on this? What is their perspective on things? And just being more open to other people's opinions. But I think the most important thing at this point might be leadership. It's hard. It's hard to view these problems when we live in a world that feels so diverse. It feels like we're all together, but then the reality is that so many people don't feel that. We may feel that we have all these connections to each other, but that's not everyone's case. And it's easy to feel that it's not our fault because we didn't feel like we did anything wrong particularly. We feel like we're doing our best, but just because it's not our fault doesn't mean it's not our problem. So going forward, every problem is our problem. It is all of our problems. Every country's problem is all of our problems. That doesn't mean we need to dictate to other countries what they should do, but it means that we should be considerate of it. And we should use that consideration to form our opinions and how we interact with each other. So I think consideration, reconciliation, and leadership would be how I'd like to contribute to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. So many people here have spoken about education, which is one of the first things I thought about. Because education has a lot to do with how people start viewing different things. Being a Swedish person, we learn a lot about Swedish history and things that happen in Europe, but we never learned about Korea, the Korean War, or anything, Asian almost. And it kind of makes me upset because I was so oblivious to a lot of stuff that was happening around me, and I was living in this kind of fantasy world because they kind of painted our history as being something good and gracious,
But then now, when we look into what we actually have been learning, it's kind of been like they've been brainwashing. But then I think this has a lot to do with like thanks to technology. Nowadays we can look up and fact check in a different way than we could before. So when we look at education and learning about other cultures and what's going on, there is no longer the argument that like I don't know, because there's always a way to know now. You hear a lot of excuses about different things that happens that are inexcusable, and they say I don't know, but then there are resources to figure out different things. And I think that a lot of inequality and stuff that's happening in the world has a lot to do with selfishness. If I'm going to be super honest, because if people would leave that selfish aspect of themselves out of the way and eliminate that completely, I think that the world would be a much better place if everyone could just stop being so selfish and being power hungry, I would say. To get that away, I think that people would be able to live in a much better world where there is peace and where they could share the resources that are available without feeling that they have to take everything for themselves. And also, in Sweden, when I was young, we learned our like saying in Swedish, where it's basically it's var mot andra som vill att andra ska vara mot dig, which means be to others how you want others to be to you. And I feel like if you teach that to the newer generation's children in a serious manner from when they're children, I think that will kind of become engraved, but then not to form it into something that is, how can I say, only accustomed to certain aspects that benefit you and your country, but in a general aspect. I think that could be a good way to start with children, at least.
Thank you. So you said, since there are so many sources that you can fact check, we should really be more on realizing the real facts and decide it for yourself. And we shouldn't be selfish and just try to not be powerful.
Yeah, the reason why I say fact check is because recently I've come to realize that a lot of public figures that I was taught was so great and everything has not been so great and hasn't done that well for humanity in a global aspect, looking away from my own country, which has made me feel very ashamed of what I've been taught and what I've been thinking has been something great about my country, well, it hasn't been. So that's why I'm saying, like, now we have the resources, use them, and use them well.
And can I ask you a question? You said that when you were young, you heard about these people being raped, but you found out they weren't. And how did your Sweden youth respond to that? Give us some ideas about what we can do as a youth.
This is something that's happened recently, actually. So there are still many people that are upset and angry, and there's still a lot that needs to be fact checked. But then they're calling for the educational system to be changed, and for these figures to not be represented in only the aspect of what they did good, but also by the things that they did bad, and to just lie to the people that you educate.
Then can we move on to the delegation Thailand to hear your opinions?
I think what we're doing now is also considering supporting peace, because we participate in a debate, discussion, cultural exchange program. And I think it's also important to make the young generation, to be able to participate in this kind of program, cultural exchange program, since they were young, so that, the program can make them acknowledge about the fact that and importance of peace and not having war. And also we can all go volunteer and donate in an organization that against war, and also pay more attention and involve ourselves in peace organization. And also as the really came from Chile said. She said that we should use our mediums and platform to share and write and talk about our concern and thought about peace more. And one thing that I want to say is that I think we all should meditate and learn new languages, like once in a while, because learning languages is really help you to understand another culture and your culture at the same time. And then the ultimate goal of learning language is that to make people understand each other, and we can become understand that culture. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. It doesn't it's not understandable at all. But we have to just accept that. For example, we live in Korea. I learned something and I don't understand, but living with it made me just kind of accept it naturally. And I think when you learn language, it makes you wish for world peace in the end. So that's my thought.
Thank you. So we talked about culture exchange and learning language as well. Turkey, would you have any more on this to add on to that, or if you don't, can pass on? Okay. Delegate of Chile? Yes.
That was a very good point about the language learning. I wasn't even thinking about it, but now that you say it, when we learn, like now us live in Korea, for example, sometimes when I want to explain, when I hear, if you tell me, okay, I have this thought, my now that we speak Korean, the majority of us, we can say, I understand your point of view, but my Chilean brain would say, oh, I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't stayed here, if I hadn't learned your language, your culture. So that is a very good point on how to keep the peace alive. Also, the other point that I was really amazed by was here, Turkey, realize we're all humans, because I believe that's the very first thing. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you're doing, the language you speak. Let's start from the base that we're all humans. We all have arms, we all have the same, we all look in the end the same when we die. If you look at our wounds, we have the same structure. The other one I really enjoyed was the one from America. Say, even if it's not your fault, doesn't mean it's not your problem. That is a very, very important point. We all tend to just leave behind what we think is not part of me. Like, oh, it didn't touch me, so I'm okay with that. It doesn't matter if it's happening or not right now. A lot of things are happening that we just put a blind eye on them, and that is not helping the situation, to be honest. There are a lot of shouting of help around the world, and sometimes we just, because we're busy, because we need to do it, because we're so inside our own minds and inside our own blindness that we don't really give a helping hand. But today, for example, just by talking with all of you, going out and having lunch with all of you, it makes me feel it's nice to have this kind of moments where we can actually just exchange a couple of words and just be oh, it's good, I understand you more now, even just by saying hello and how are you, what's your name, where you come from. What I want to say too is that even when we have these moments, when we get out of this door, we kind of forget what we're doing here because we're so engrossed in our own problems, in our own life. So I want to say there's no need to be a superhuman to make a change in the place you're at. Try to change little aspects in your daily life to actually make a huge difference on how you see peace. I believe that a little act of kindness comes in a chain. So if you make one, that person will come with one, and that person will keep, and